Hi, this is Lynn McCool, and I would like to talk to you about your final project, which is a guide to lab practices. The final project guide to lab practices, also known as the GLP, is a series of documents that you will be creating. Each team will work with the client, Daniel S., a safety specialist of lab safety at 3M Company, to create an applied technical communication project, in this instance a Guide to Lab Practices Manual, or the GLP. Using client contact information, teams will design a project for the client by incorporating the written, oral, visual, and electronic communication methods that we have been discussing this semester. While no minimum guidelines are established, demonstration of advanced proficiency is presumed, so please take note of the following. You'll want to secure instructor approval for any kind of change or variance in project descriptions, and that's part of what the elevator pitch is for you to pitch your idea to me so that I can give you some feedback on that. Projects are to be completed by the final date set by the instructor and count for 20% of the course grade. Well, as you know, Aerosoft has been contacted by 3M. They are requesting that we help them update an existing technical document. Aerosoft has been in contact then with Dan S., the safety specialist of lab safety at 3M. Again, each team is going to be working with the client, Daniel S., to create this applied technical communication project, which happens to be a guide to lab practices. And you'll have to use client information, and using client information based upon the ethos of the company and the specific requests that Daniel S. makes about this kind of document, teams are going to be designing a project, again, by incorporating the written, oral, visual, and electronic communication methods that we've been talking about. You should look for a pair of emails, a taped interview with Dan, and then, of course, I have given you the raw content of the original Guide to Lab Practices. And based on all of these things, your team will use the information and the content given to you to create the new GLP for 3M. And you'll be creating it in both a print and a web version. Okay, so both print and web. And this makes sense in today's marketplace and work world because oftentimes companies may still have print manuals on the shelf somewhere, but more than likely new employees will be introduced to some kind of web-based tutorial or web-based manual system, and so that's why you're being asked to provide both a print and web-based version of the manual. Okay, so again, while I don't have any minimum guidelines, you do need to demonstrate advanced proficiency, and your first task then is going to be to read and listen to the material, discuss as a team the design concepts that you have for this document. Obviously, you'll want to divide up the work and set deadlines, and I'll be talking about each of the different components in this final project. So you saw that I just clicked on this right arrow. This will take you then to the video from Dan S., and you do need to listen carefully. If you click here where you see 1 and 2, that will take you to the additional emails that he has sent to us, and then this will also take you to the old Guide to Lab Practices content. So that's the raw content that you'll use in order to create the new Guide to Lab Practices. Remember, you want to do brainstorming using conceptual mapping, so hopefully you have watched that little 2-minute video. Discuss as a team the best way to create both your paper and web-based versions of the manual for 3M. Choose a solution, draft your proposal for 3M, and produce both paper documentation and web documentation of 3M's Guide to Lab Practices. Okay, so by way of introduction, I just clicked on this final project Guide to Lab Practices, and I walked you through the different pages within that so that you could see where you go to get the information, to find out about the client, to find out what the client wants, and also to read the follow-up emails sent by the client, here is the document or the page that has the raw content that you'll be using to create the Guide to Lab Practices. Let me stop for a minute and just talk about the different aspects of this project. So the first thing that will be due is something called an elevator pitch, and that will be due Monday 3/23. So the Monday that you get back after spring break, that elevator pitch is due. And again, that elevator pitch is really just your ideas about how you think you want to solve this communication problem that 3M has. And so you're just going to pitch that idea to me. I'm going to give you some feedback and let you know whether I think your proposed solutions have a good chance of being successful or not. And if they aren't, then I'll give you some other suggestions of things that you might try. Then you'll follow up that pitch a week later with a formal written project plan. In other words, I've given you some feedback, and then you'll take that and actually put together your project plan where you'll detail for me and also Daniel S. how you're going to go about completing this really large project for 3M. The first really major piece of the project is the Guide to Lab Practices, the printed version of the Guide to Lab Practices, and that will be due April 13th. Then a week later, you will be turning in the URL or the web link for the dynamic website version of the Guide to Lab Practices. On Monday 4/27, you'll upload your screencast of your final presentation that gives us an overview and demonstrates for us the different kinds of design choices that you made for both your print and your web version. And I'll be talking more about how you might go about to accomplish that, but you will be using screencasting technology again in order to create that final presentation. And then the last thing associated with this project is a final report, which is an individual report. So all of the other parts of the project are team-based, but the final report is individual, and that gives you a space where you can describe your involvement as well as the members of your team, their involvement with the project, and you can also give me an assessment on how well you think things went and how well both you and your team members performed on that particular project. Okay, the next thing that I want to show you is the actual Guide to Lab Practices content. So if you click on this, it should take us to the content itself. Okay, so here you can see the content, and this content really is just very jumbled. It's really a mess, is basically the best way that I could say it. So you can see that there's lots of bulleting, and then there's no bulleting, and there is just text after text after text. So part of your job as a team is to actually read through all of the content and figure out what the best way would be to organize this information. So it's really not in any kind of organizational structure at all at this point. It's just the raw content that has been thrown into a page for you, and so it's your job then to figure out how it should be organized. So it is not organized really in any way, shape, or form in its current state. So it really is the team's job to figure out what goes where, and you'll want to be thinking about how to organize the information both textually but also visually. So there may be instances where tables might be appropriate to organize a large chunk of information, or bullet points or other visual strategies in order to make the information more visually accessible to the reader. So you'll want to be thinking about those kinds of things too. Okay, so I gave you a little bit of an overview of the Guide to Lab Practices project and the different components of it. So now let's step back and let's talk about the project plan that you're going to be writing, as well as that little brief elevator pitch that you'll be giving me before you actually write the plan. Okay, let's talk about the elevator pitch. The elevator pitch is the basic problem your proposal addresses. There are three elements of the pitch: problem, objective, benefits. First of all, you want to talk about the overriding problem. This is the key problem that your project intends to address or solve. Next, you want to address objectives. What do you plan to do to move from the current situation to a proposed situation or desired results? And then finally, you want to talk about benefits, those good things that will accrue to the stakeholders while the project objectives are in the process of being achieved, either as deliverables are completed or after the project objectives have been achieved themselves. So let's talk about the pitch in specific. After you have chosen your team's potential solution to 3M's GLP manual remake, both for the print and web version, you want to create your project pitch. So explain briefly in about 1 to 2 minutes your idea to me and the class. You'll want to introduce yourself and establish credibility, grab with a good story, present your big idea in a sentence, give them your best 2 or 3 good reasons why your solution is better than everyone else's, mention something that distinguishes you, offer a brief cost benefits analysis, and make sure that you end memorably. The other thing that I want to mention too is that because you are screencasting your pitch, you probably will want to use just one voice in the screencast so that there is continuity and so you have consistency from speaker and information across every single slide. Plus the fact that it may be very difficult to get each person's voice into the screencast depending upon the software that you're using. So I would suggest using just one voice in the screencast. Okay, I'm going to stop here for now, and I will pick back up the notes on the project plan proposal in another screencast so that I can give that full attention and not have to rush through. So I'll talk to you in a little bit. Thanks.